Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for the new moon in Gemini, which is happening on June 13th, at least where I live, at 2:42 p.m. Central Standard Time. And just to review, a new moon is when the sun and moon are in conjunction at the same exact degree. So this time around, it's 22 degrees of Gemini. 22 is a master number. And so if you want to take it to that extent, that could be a great time to establish something. Of course, we are approaching the Mars retrograde at the end of June. But the book that I'm going to be referencing is by Jane Spiller, and she has since passed away. She was an astrologer. And I guess, according to the book title, or, cover, it says she's the author of Astrology for the Soul. And I don't own that book, but I've seen that around. And so this book is called New Moon Astrology, Using New Moon Power Days to Change and Revitalize Your Life. And so she covers all of the sun signs and the new moons for those signs, and what to wish for during those particular new moons. So I'm going to read some of the keywords that she talks about for Gemini and kind of just elaborate on those and talk just a little bit about the information provided by this particular new moon and what we can expect. So some of the keywords she talks about are motion, activity, learning, communication skills, logic, cleverness, social ease, positive daily interactions, calming mental anxiety. And in the universal chart, Gemini rules the third house of communication, but it also rules siblings. It rules cousins. I looked this up one time because I knew it was extended family members, and I wanted to know specifically who they were. And also your local neighborhood, your neighbors. So I'm actually surprised I don't have any plants in the third house, because I like to stroll around my neighborhood, and not everybody does. Some people drive everywhere they go, so they're never really connected to where they live. I don't drive, so maybe that has something to do with it. But anyway, let me look at some of the other things that she says. Well, they talk about Gemini ruling communication, writing, speaking, effective listening, and teaching, mental rapport, understanding different opinions. And that is in short supply today. With the internet, we have the ability to give our opinion, but how many people really read other people's opinions before reacting and really acknowledge those opinions, especially when they are totally counter to our own? The likelihood is more along the lines of, you're an idiot. I just got called an idiot this morning. But that's the internet for you. Well, am I 100% innocent of any of this stuff? Absolutely not. And actually, I want to talk about this because I think that this is something that we all need to look at. And this has to do with our interaction with the internet, which is really connected to Gemini and the third house. So how do you interact online? Some people are like pretty much offline. They may do practical things that they have to do online, but they don't have Facebook accounts. They don't have, many interactions at all online. And some people are like immersed in it. Some people, it may be important for them to learn how to effectively use the internet. So I'm not suggesting that there aren't people that need to learn. Some people have to rely on other people to be able to use the internet, and that is not really good, because we should be as self-sufficient as possible. But for the vast, vast majority of us who do use the internet and use it quite often, the issue of communication is very important from the standpoint of what is being communicated, how much of this is worthwhile. Gemini can deal with trivia, okay, superficial knowledge. Knowledge that, compared to a Virgo person that is also ruled by Mercury, is not really useful. Virgos collect knowledge for its usefulness. Geminis like the entertainment value. And Geminis tend to skim the surface of life in general and be very ADD, not necessarily sticking with anything very long because something else is kind of capturing their attention. And that is the story of my life, even though I'm a Sagittarian and not a Gemini. So the ADD mentality is something that is kind of really stoked by the internet in general and social media in particular. And I know personally that I want to look at this in my own life because I want to be able to be as productive as possible. And you don't have to be a type A personality. You don't even have to be, the apex in being able to focus. But you can really improve a whole lot by being able to put your attention on things that will have lasting value. And if you believe that you are too easily distracted, then it's better not to even go on social media first thing in the morning if you have other things to do. That's just a fact. Now, what happens when you have an online business? This is the thing that I have to work out here for myself, because it's not always that easy. You can't be offline that much. You have to take care of people's inquiries and things like that. So when we talk about short trips, we're talking about, as I said before, being in your neighborhood or being in a nearby town. I would kind of add something which may be editorializing or shoving my opinion down your throat. Think about whether or not, if you do have a car, you need to take your car everywhere, and whether or not you can walk to the store. How many people drive to the gym so that they can go on a machine that is like a Stairmaster? You know what I mean? There's like, at some level, it's a little bit crazy and silly, isn't it? When you can simply walk where you're going. And I know there's machines that have like different speeds. I understand that. But I'm just saying that being able to take in your local environment and feel that you're connected to it is great. And also just being able to exercise, but at the same time, it's like a meditation when you're walking. So this is a way to explore the local area. Take a day trip in your own area without having to take your car. And actually, looking at her list, transportation is included in this Gemini, under this Gemini header. So what I was saying about how you get where you need to go. Do you always take a car? Can you walk? Can you take a bike? I have a crate on my bike, and it serves me very well, and it's a lot less of a hassle than finding a parking space. And you save money, but you also are able to exercise in a very holistic way. And again, that sense of community, that sense of not being in this metal box. Now, one of the things, this is very interesting. I should see when she wrote this book, because they talk about the media. They say that, oh no, they have the internet, so it must not be that ancient. Let me look at when she did this. 2001. Well, I remember back in 2001, and the internet, of course, was up and running, but it wasn't that all-pervasive. We didn't have smartphones. So she says, factual information, formal education, this is learning, Gemini ruling learning. Print media, the internet, curiosity. I like that she includes curiosity, because that's an important component of it. Learning something so that you can reference it is pretentious. It's really, it's funny. Sometimes when I look at novels that are, you know, from the early part of the 20th century, I don't know if it was like Gertrude Stein or something like that. They use French phrases all the time, which is very pretentious. Or maybe I'm just not that classy, right? But in general, the love to have intellectual curiosity, to me, has nothing to do with your socioeconomic class. I know people who have college degrees from good schools who never crack open a book. They have the basic the intellectual stuff to work with, but they simply don't have the intellectual curiosity. And when I say never crack open a book, yeah, maybe once in a while, but maybe like a book that involves some kind of sports figure or something like that. But not anything that really is about making you think deeply. Well, that's not fair. That particular book might have been kind of different than that, but you get my point, is that in general, a lot of people don't read, and they don't even read online articles. They just see the headline of something and they react, and they don't even get all the facts. We've heard about fake news. People have different ideas of what fake news is. It's a very bizarre time to be alive right now. But there is a disinformation campaign going on. And it's really important not to get all your information from corporate entities. That makes absolutely no sense, because their agenda is obviously going to be skewed towards their overlords. And we don't have to even go there of who they are. Can you tolerate an opinion that is wildly different from your own? Can you like sit with it? Can you try to figure out why somebody would possibly think like that? And remember too that sometimes people hold opinions because of their ignorance. When I say ignorance, they could have a very high IQ and be ignorant. Ignorant means not having sufficient knowledge on a subject. And all of us are probably ignorant in some area that we think we know a lot about, because all the information is not revealed on it. So we're only going with what we know. But some people really think they have all the answers, and they are just ignorant. And that has been the hardest thing for me to wrap my brain around, because I know people, I am surrounded by people who are highly educated. And yet, from where I'm standing, they're incredibly ignorant and low information, actually. And I can't understand why they allow themselves to be that way. Well, obviously that's just my opinion. They may think that I'm crazy. for my opinions. So it's not like they're thinking great things about me either. So the point is that right now, and this may come out during this time of the new moon, that we are pointing fingers at one another and saying, you are ignorant, you don't have the facts, and the other side is saying you don't have the facts. And meanwhile, with Jupiter and Scorpio, truth bombs are being dropped, if you know where to look. Things are working behind the scenes. And I'm curious if it's going to blow up now, or if, because it's supposed to. I mean, we're supposed to be right on the brink of all of this busting wide open. But I keep hearing that. So perhaps it won't be until Jupiter goes into Sagittarius that the truth really, really comes out. With Jupiter and Scorpio, there's a lot of detective work going on. But maybe in Jupiter and Sagittarius, the truth bombs start to be dropped so frequently in so massive and public a way that nobody can escape the truth anymore. I don't know. I think it's very interesting that Jupiter goes into Sagittarius on November 8th. I need to know what election day is in America in 2008, because that is definitely around the time that we hold our elections. And we don't just hold elections on, during the presidential period of time. The two main times that people pay attention are during the presidential race and the midterms. And this is going to be the midterms time. So anyway, let's see what else she talks about. Logic and cleverness, ingenuity, variety. Variety is such an important thing, I think. How many of you try new foods? How many of you try different brands of soap or anything different? Or do you stick to the same thing? It's good to keep an open mind and to think that even if you like what you have, that there's a possibility that something else holds value in your life. And being willing to have the flexibility and the desire to add more things to your life, to add new skills to your life. Now, they say handyman skills. I think that's a bit quirky because any kind of fine motor skill would fall in the category of Gemini, because I think Gemini rules the hands. So that would apply for anything. And how many of you have written in cursive lately? I heard that children these days don't know how to write in cursive and they don't know how to read cursive. So that is really shocking to me. But on my end of things, I don't write much anymore. I used to actually write things out. The only time I write is not even when I'm signing things, because I'm usually using a debit card and I'm using my, the tip of my finger and just writing scrawl, not even trying to write correctly. There's a really great book that some of you may be familiar with. It's called Drawing from the, is it the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain? I don't even know. Maybe I'll Google it right now. And drawing from the, it's called Right Side of the Brain. Now, the right side of the brain is actually, this is weird. I'm left-handed in writing. And that means that the right side of the brain is stimulated, which is kind of the more abstract part. And yet it's really weird. It's like the left brain is the logical part. Shouldn't it be isn't that weird? It should be that the left is the weird part. But anyway, that's because the left-handed, right-brained. So they talk about, this book talks about, doing exercises to improve your drawing skills by drawing from using your opposite hand. I don't know if it's always going to be. That was one of the things that you do. You use your opposite hand to write, to kind of practice, and that stimulates your other part of your brain, the other half of your brain, so that you kind of like are more in, I guess it's balance or something. But that is something that you can do. I think it's supposed to help you by practicing writing, just writing, let alone drawing, but writing with your opposite hand and seeing how well you write with it. And that's supposed to do something. I think it's supposed to stimulate the other half of your brain. So, for what that's worth. Okay, well, they talk about she talks about social skills, tact, acceptance. I mean, tact is not what I would associate with Gemini. Enjoying the moment, I would. Wittiness, for sure. Gemini people, somebody with a prominent Gemini, is a lot of fun to be around. Very entertaining. Can have great conversations with them. Enjoying the moment, having a sociable nature. Even if you say to yourself that you're shy, being able to be approachable, being able to be, not guarded. These are things that I would associate with Gemini. Friendly. Friendliness is not some kind of like thing you have to be born with. You can be shy and be friendly. And that just means that if somebody approaches you, you don't act like they're like a threat to you. That you just kind of are warm, that you are accommodating. Let's see if she talks about anything else. Yeah, and then she talks about these relationships. Brothers, sisters, neighbors, schoolmates, roommates. She didn't say cousins, though. Okay, and she says that Gemini rules overactive mental processes. Is it processes or processes? Excessive questioning. Guilty as charged. Trickery with words. Superficiality. Nervousness. Indecision. I would add being fickle. And that is very annoying if you know somebody that has a prominent Gemini, where they're very capable of changing their opinion like they change their underwear. So that kind of thing can make you not trust the Gemini person in terms of their perceptions and their opinions, because, you just have to like contact them tomorrow and they'll have a totally different one. So being consistent with your ideas is good. Not being rigid, but being consistent and not being that indecisive. And apparently, Gemini is a rival for Libra in terms of indecisiveness, from what I'm gathering in recent places that I've read. So if you can relate to that, if you're a Gemini who can relate, you can certainly pipe up. So I'm going to, before I get out of here, I just want to look at the actual information. So we have Sun, Moon in Gemini. We have Mercury in Cancer. You may feel, even though this is not a full moon, maybe you'll feel a sense of heightened awareness or even agitation. Gemini is a very, I think, high-strung sign. And you may feel like overly talkative and that other people are as well. Talk is cheap, so if people are trying to sell you something, keep in mind that there's a lot of emphasis with the sun and moon in Gemini. And with the moon, there can be a manipulation where people are trying to get you to do something appealing to your emotions in a very sketchy kind of a way, manipulative way, using words as a weapon. Mercury's in Cancer, as is Venus, which is great because that's more sensitive. And, you know, that can be more careful, cautious about communication. Loose lips sink ships. Never forget that. Mars is in Aquarius, and there's actually, at this time, some hard angles to Mars. Mars square Jupiter. And this is something that is going to be kind of a thing, because when Mars retrogrades, it's going to be doing an extended stay in Aquarius. So we're going to have that square continuing. And the thing about a square with Mars and Jupiter is that over-the-top actions can be quite interesting, to say the least. Don't overact. Don't act too impulsively, but also don't overdo things. There's a square between Mars and Uranus, that revolutionary energy, which has now gone into Taurus. I guess it's within orb of Aquarius. Mars is at 8 Aquarius, and let's see at the time. I think it's only going to be like at 0 or 1 degree at the time. It's only going to be at 1 degree at the time. I'm talking about Uranus. And so it's not that tight of a square, but still. It's within orb, and so with that kind of a thing going on, that kind of an aspect being formed, people are feeling pent up. This is around the time when schools get let out for the year. So this is something, I mean, this could be kind of almost a bit like a full moon in how it manifests. I did notice that there was another occasion recently when we had a new moon that kind of felt more like a full moon when I was out and about. That last full moon in Sagittarius, that was a doozy. I saw some real interesting people out there. And I sometimes I forget, and I'm like, why am I riding on a train and this is like a circus atmosphere? And it's like the middle of the afternoon on a weekday. And that was why, because it was right, the full moon was right there in the afternoon, in the morning even. So revolution is in the air. But with Mars squared Jupiter, people could have grandiose notions of what exactly it is that they are going after. And they may be thinking that they're doing something for the benefit of humanity when really they're being a useful idiot for the deep state or whatever you want to call it. So be very careful about whatever it is that you do and make sure that you're ready to pay the price, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not worth it, any of it. The people who protest, you have no idea who you're protesting next to, if they're hired guns, if they're people that are embedded in a crowd. And I'm really serious about that. I totally believe in standing up for rights, human rights. But I'm just saying that it seems to be infiltrated big time, and I don't think that it really accomplishes much, and it could hurt you could hurt yourself by doing it. There are better ways to band together with others that are smarter and not so just like for show, symbolic, and makes you feel like you did something, but then you go home and it's the same old, same old. The sun and moon are both forming squares with Neptune. So delusion's a go-go. Self-deluded, that's what I was saying before about, I wanted to say, grandiose notions. That's what I was saying. You're a legend in your own mind, and you think you're saving the world, but you're playing right into the hands of somebody who wants chaos, who's actually instigating all of this. So basically, what I want to say, this is what's really strange, that we have these conjunctions with Mercury. I mean, that's not really strange. I mean, Mercury is very close, can't be too far from the sun. But in addition to that, we have the sun and moon also squaring Neptune at the same time that the sun and moon are in conjunction with Mercury. So that can be, to me, really wackadoodle, because it can almost be like people think they are being logical and they're not. And they think they're being totally lied to and deluded, and they think they are this vessel of the truth. So enjoy. And it is supposed to be a supermoon from what I've heard. So perhaps the effects will be more pronounced. It's definitely, I think this particular new moon, how we get information from the media is so important. And I'm so glad that there are alternatives now. And remember to possibly sign up for an alternative site. If you have people that you like who've been taken off of YouTube, try to track them down, because there are things like BitChute now that seem to be gaining ground due to the censorship issue. And I didn't even talk about that on here, about the censorship that's going on YouTube. And I also want to say, if there's somebody who has really provided you with food for thought, consider giving them a donation, a one-time donation, like a PayPal donation, or I prefer that to Patreon myself, because I think that although I am a patron of somebody on Patreon, and I feel that it's very valuable who I am a patron of. However, I understand why people don't like that. So, consider that, because some of these people, they're citizen journalists or other types of information or inspiration. They deserve to get a recognition for their efforts, as well as to be supported financially if they are doing this full time, and some of them are. And also just seek out alternatives. That's one of the biggest things that I would say to you. But also never let go of your own discernment. Don't just take even the alternatives at face value. So it's a very interesting time to be alive. That is for sure. And I hope that you enjoyed this, and good luck to you on the new moon in Gemini. Take care. Bye.